Day, and happy to welcome to the conversation Captain Kelsie Carpenter, who is a hurricane hunter. That is the colloquial name. He has a much fancier title than that. Captain Carpenter, appreciate you spending a few minutes with us. What an incredible career you have. Let's start with how you got into this. I mean, do you grow up going, you know what? I want to be in an airplane flying in hurricanes one day.
Hey, Richard. Good to be with you. Sort of. I didn't learn about the actual hurricane hunters until later in life, but I developed a fascination with weather at a pretty young age. I used to drive my mom crazy when I was a kid growing up in Virginia. Every time there'd be a thunderstorm or even a severe thunderstorm, she would have to come drag me off the porch. Because I'd be sitting there watching it with a big smile on my face while everybody else was tuning into the National Weather Service radio, trying to figure out if we need to take shelter, and I was just having a ball.
So your specific role, you're part of this team with the U.S. Air Force Reserve's 53rd Weather Recon Squadron. You are actually a meteorologist, right? Not a pilot?
Correct. Yeah, we have the standard crew for a mission is it's a 5-person crew. We have 2 pilots and a navigator up front of our airplane. And in the back is the load master, who's kind of in charge of everything that goes on the airplane. They secure all the cargo we're carrying, whatever that might be. And they have a pretty good knowledge base of the maintenance of the aircraft, which can come in pretty handy sometimes. And then the 5th position is the Aerial Reconnaissance Weather Officer, or ARWO, which is basically a meteorologist on board, and we're the ones who are trying to dig into the data that the plane is collecting on a second-by-second basis.
All right, so walk me through one of these missions. Hurricane is building in the Atlantic. It's making its way into the Gulf. If you want to use Hurricane Ida as an example, fine, or we can just kind of make it generic. What's the process? When do you decide, okay, this is a storm that we are going to fly into to collect data? When do those happen? How frequently? Just kind of fill in the blanks for me.
Well, we are officially tasked by the National Hurricane Center, which falls under NOAA, under the Department of the Interior. So they are our tasking agency. So what they are doing is very smart forecasters on the ground are constantly watching global satellite, looking for areas of disturbed tropical weather. So it could start as a tropical wave, an area of low pressure, a cluster of thunderstorms that comes off the coast of Africa. And once they determine that it looks like the system is developing or has the potential to develop some sort of organization, they will then officially task us to go check it out. And we usually fly the storm from its infancy all the way to landfall. So it might start out as what's called an invest mission. It's not quite a tropical depression yet, but it's showing some signs that it could be one. So our job is then to fly into that, figure out if maybe it's got some organization that has some low-level circulation and the appropriate wind, and then we'll continue to fly it all the way up through hurricane status. And each mission, each level of that process has a different mission set that we fly. So, for example, for Hurricane Ida, when it was out in the Gulf, we fly at 10,000 feet, and the Hurricane Center, basically the biggest piece of data that they're looking for is they want us to fly straight through the middle of the storm at 10,000 feet, go blast through the eye wall into the eye. Because if you look at a hurricane on satellite, you can tell where the center of the storm is. It's the big eye on satellite. Yeah. But inside that eye is a smaller, tighter circulation, and that is the steering mechanism, kind of like a spinning top. That's the steering mechanism of the storm, and our job is to find that exact point and then provide those coordinates to the Hurricane Center, and they plug it into the models, and that's what fine-tunes the cone that you see on TV and online.
It's pretty remarkable. What's the flight like? I mean, I guess maybe on 2 levels. How far out? I mean, do you guys only, from where you're stationed, only pick the storm up once it comes into the Gulf? Or do you go out into the Atlantic? So how far a flight? And then, I mean, we've all been on a plane that has gone through a thunderstorm and felt some turbulence. How bumpy a ride is this?
Well, I'll answer your second question first. That's obviously kind of the most common question we get, and what I like to tell people is it's about what you would expect it to be, right? So if you've ever experienced severe turbulence on a commercial flight, we get a lot of that, and especially in the eye wall. We have the benefit of having onboard radar. Each crew member has the radar right in front of us, so we kind of know what to pick through, what maybe to avoid. We're trained on different radar images that might indicate something that we probably don't want to fly into, and there's some other areas that we feel confident that the plane can handle, and we'll fly into those. But to answer your first question, we've got a really long range of area that we cover. If it's a storm way out in the Atlantic Ocean, we will forward deploy down to the Virgin Islands and fly it out of St. Croix until the islands come under threat, and then we'll kind of retreat back to either Keesler and Biloxi, or maybe somewhere like Savannah or Miami. And then we also will fly as far west as Hawaii if those islands are being threatened by a storm out there as well.
I'm not going to tell you who this is, but there's a person that sent me a message that is a statewide elected official that was curious about the idea of a ride-along. That's something that is fascinating to me as well. Does that ever happen? Do you ever take extras, or is this such a specified mission that, frankly, is fairly dangerous that it's the crew that's trained for it and that's it?
Well, we do take media along, especially if it's kind of a storm that's generating a lot of headlines nationally, maybe threatening a highly populated area. We take media along. I'm not sure the exact process they go through to get on board. It doesn't come to me. It goes through our public affairs folks. But I will tell you, I've rarely seen the same media member twice. I think once is probably good enough for them.
Really? So what is the reaction when they get off the plane post-flight?
The first reaction is always, well, that was a long flight, because our missions, we don't just fly into the storm and then head back. We normally spend 5 or 6 hours in the storm environment. And for a large hurricane, that means we're pretty much in hurricane or at least tropical storm conditions for up to 6 hours. So it's a long mission. And then the second thing.
So you're 6 hours of bumping and jostling and pretty significant turbulence, the drops and the falls and all that goes along with that.
Right, and that includes the 2 to 3 hours en route there and back. So that's why the flights can be pretty long. But the interesting thing is a lot of people don't realize, they see a hurricane on satellite and it looks like a giant buzzsaw of a storm, so they assume that it's always bad. But what's actually going on underneath that cloud shield is there are different rain bands circulating around the eye. So you go through a rain band and you get beat up pretty good, see some pretty nasty stuff, and then you might have a break for 20 or 30 minutes or even longer. So sometimes we hear, it wasn't as bad as they thought. And then we get to the eye wall, and that kind of is the great equalizer, and that's probably the most memorable part of the flight.
2 things left for you. One serious, one not so much. I'm assuming drink service gets suspended fairly rarely given the turbulence.
It does. Once you've been around long enough, you know when you need to secure all of your loose items. That's for sure.
No flight attendants making their way up and down the aisle or reminding you to buckle your seatbelts. This is actually an interesting question from William and Brandon. He says, are they in constant contact or tracked by the Coast Guard in the event that, God forbid, they ever have to make a water landing?
Water landing is never the goal, but we luckily
I would say not.
The pilots are actually trained on how to do it, and it's been done before, not by us, but it's been done by the Air Force and other pilots. So it's something that we are trained to do. Thankfully, I've never had to do it. Don't know anybody who has. But yes, we are in constant contact with air traffic control from various agencies, even international ones. And when we're down in the Southern Gulf, we're talking to Mexico, we're talking to Cuba and other countries. And the higher ups in the DoD world definitely have their eyes on us as well.
Last thing for you, Captain Carpenter, as we wrap this up, it feels like we've only got 30 seconds left. It feels like we've gotten to the point where the forecast and the modeling that we see on television are way more accurate. It feels like there's not much guesswork in tracking a hurricane anymore. Is that accurate?
It is. It's a combination of some very smart forecasters at the National Hurricane Center, some very powerful supercomputers that run these models, And then we are just a small but important part of that process because we just try to provide the best data we can as quickly as we can.
Great stuff. Hey, thanks so much for your time. Enjoy the Labor Day weekend, and Captain Carpenter, please be safe.
All right, Richard, appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Interesting stuff. We got more coming up with you. It's the JT Show.